Hi everyone, welcome to Bookish Love with Krystal. Today I have with me author Benny Sperling. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm glad we could have you on. Um, so we've been just to preface this for everybody, Benny's episode was actually supposed to come out last month, but it would in February, but because of our schedules, because we're both full-time working professionals as well, our schedules have kind of just jumbled on us. So finally, we actually get to meet face to face, and this is awesome. So I kind of want to jump on in to what got you started writing and publishing and what made you just kind of go for it.
So that's a long answer, and I'll give you as much detail as I can.
Of
So I
course.
started writing as a teenager. I think we kind of all started that way, right? We just
Mhm.
start when we don't know about it. Have exactly zero F's to give, and we're just like, whatever. I don't care. I like this. This is cool. And I started writing back then. I had some good feedback from a teacher, Mr. Shaw. I don't remember what grade that was. And then my dad's friend, this guy Stan Stacy, right? He was a customer of my dad's, and he really kind of he was the first guy to like look at my stuff and really kind of give me a critical eye about here's what you can do better, like that kind of stuff. And then my life spiraled completely out of control. Uh, we'll pick up years and years later, right?
Mhm.
So age 25, I met my wife. She and I've been together 20 years. Like, she's the best. And so I gave up writing for a really, really long time. So I just do this. I can't finish a book. I could never get past like 30 pages, right? Like, it's just, oh, I'm the worst writer of all time. And so then I started in 2008.
I'm I'm
We
losing you a
started.
little bit there.
Okay. No, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I
Uh,
can. Okay.
all right. 2008, they started making games. We had roommates, and they were into doing modern board games like Munchkin and D&D and stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. This is cool. This is fun. And our roommate at the time, Brian, said, "Hey, we could make a board game." We can't make a board game. Well, so the next day, I'm sitting at work. I worked at on the top of Appalachians. It's ugly. And I happened to be sitting at the desk between, it's like a shift change thing. Started jumping. Board game,
I'm
right?
gonna
Like,
pause real quick. Go ahead.
all right. So I'd kind of come up with a game idea, and we actually started a company back then, 2009, I guess we started it. We put out 4 games, very low production, like made games literally in our basement. We were in upstate New York, and we moved out here to Texas, 2010, my wife and I, and then that fell apart. And so it was like I got creatively blocked again, and then so I made some other games for other people, and so where all of this really leads to and kicks off is in 2014. I was making games. I started doing basically games for fun, right? My friend Sue Sheldon, she's big in the board game community, made a comment about she likes these roll and write games. And at that point, I hadn't made any roll and write games. Um, hadn't even dreamed of roll and write revolution yet. And her favorite thing in the world is pie, the pie. And so I made a roll and write game about pie and sent it to her, like, haha. And so she played. I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, yeah, okay, great. Sure. Whatever, Suze, whatever, and forgot about it. Forgot it existed. And happened to be talking to this random guy on the internet. It's randos on the internet. I'm telling you, this is like where it all leads to. So this guy, Derek Dooley, right? He's this guy in California. Right now he's in Oregon, but he sent me a message out of the blue. He said, "Hey, I've played your game. It's great. Why?" you know, well, like, yeah, you'll see. You'll see. He's this. He's incorrigible, and he said, "No, no." He's like, "It's really good." Great, whatever, dude. He goes, "No, it's so good. I've made my own game, and I'm going to publish it." I'm like, "Great, publish your game, whatever, dude." So, "Will you play test?" Yeah, sure, sure, sure. It's like so, and we started talking. 2014 years ago, and at some point I had made, so I got really into doing these like print and play roll and write things, like where people at home can print out their own stuff, grab their own dice, kind of on the cheap. Like, let's help people have fun.
Mhm.
And we talked about doing a company for a really long time. And the thing that always tripped us up, and this is the thing that I think a lot of creatives trip up on, is we didn't have the skill set to make our own visuals. You know what I mean? Like we could make the components and we could make it as functional as possible. About all the wind. Uh, but we couldn't actually make it look like it needed to look, like an actual pretty game that people would want to play. And another guy, I met another guy who was like into doing art. He's like, oh, hey, I'll do some art for you. And I'll, whatever you pay me if you want to, it's fine. And so we started doing that. Like, okay, yeah, cool, cool, cool. And then I think like a lot of people, the pandemic hit, right? And the world shut down. And during that time, I realized that people needed people needed something. They needed entertainment, right? And so we started talking about, well, if we start putting these games out, people can play them over Zoom, right? You can set up a Zoom and everybody has their own sheet. You just, as long as somebody has dice and everybody can share and be interactive, right? Cool, cool, cool. So then, of course, the pandemic's raging on. Everybody's like, oh, we're gonna die. Like how that goes. And so I started I started writing a book just out of, it was started as a story. I was like, this is never gonna be a book. I don't care. And I started writing along the lines of the extremely nerdy element of RPG characters. When they wake up, they have amnesia, they have no idea what's going on. And so
Nice.
they're looking for somebody to guide them through this process, right? And so I started out with that as the theme. And then I was like, well, let's make it 1950. Let's make them detectives. Let's do something just crazy, right? And so I started down that path. And I would send stuff to Derek, and he's like, "Wow, this is really good." Like, just don't lie. Like, be honest. No, no, this is amazing. Okay, fine. So like we get into that, and I got to like what I thought was the end, right? And I said, "Okay, there, I'm done. It's 30 odd pages. There's this character Mooney, who's this kind of schlub, hard drinking detective, kind of guy, and he's the character that leads the main character who has amnesia. There's no idea what's going on. Out from, oh, we've got kidnapped by mobsters and we're going to be killed. That's like the book opens. They're going to die. Like, like bad things are happening, right? And so the I realized the main character wasn't who I thought the main character was going to be, right? And so I started down this path of the main character was this guy and he had amnesia. They met Moody and they were both going to be killed by this mobster, right? And so I realized some of the way through they were looking for this guy's girlfriend. They thought he was looking for his girlfriend, and uh, I kind of was like, oh no, I'm heading into the territory of his girlfriend's been fridged, right? Like the Gail Simone reference. Like I'm like, nah, absolutely, 100% no. And so I pulled back on the shoot, and I thought, okay, what if the amnesiac is actually really the girlfriend in disguise, dressed up as a male, and he's acting as a detective, and he's pulled all this stuff off. And I was like, oh, this is good. Okay, cool, cool. And so like I kind of lead the reader down this path of there's all of these very slight references that the main character is not who the main character thinks they are, and so like he he as him versus she as she becomes she later, um meets all these characters who know her as a woman, except Mooney has no idea who she is.
Mhm.
Mooney only knows her as Duval, this guy who's hanging out with this detective that said, hey, I need some help finding my girlfriend, or getting my girlfriend back from this mobster, right? And so at the end of the story, like I was like, all right, fine, well, Mooney gets shot, and the she is revealed later to be her, and kind of has this moment of like, taking the mask off, being like, there I am. Wait, I've been here all the time, and oh, holy F, I'm in the men's room. This is not gonna work. right? So it's like it's this kind of like very noir stuff, but like just so much just dripping with like absurdities. Because I love like all the like Elmore Leonard and the new Sherry Priest books where she's got the fortune teller, right?
Hmm.
Have you read those? Oh, they're so good. And so Christopher Noir or Christopher Moore, like all these really absurd writers. I'll be just as absurd as I can. So anyway, so Mooney dies, right? And I'm like, I sent it to Derek, and he's like, "What happens to Mooney?" I'm like, "I don't know, he's dead." I'm like, "No, you can't kill Mooney." I'm like the
My
heck you
character.
say, pal? I do what I want. Like this story is done. I'm back to making games. No, you can't kill Mooney. I need to know what happens. I'm like, fine. He wakes up in the hospital. Like, well, what then? Then what happens? Okay, I don't know what happened. And then so what happened was I wrote a book. Then it is that story.
Oh, nice. I
And
love
so
that.
and so act one is the story. Act one is the 30 odd pages of running around chasing after this dame that he can't find because oh wait, he's the dame, and then it gets nuts from there. And so like I kind of go from there to now in act two when her name's Annie. When Annie's revealed, and so this is the stupid setup for this book, and a lot of it is just line for one character asking Annie if she's okay. You know, like
Hmm.
from the Smooth Criminal song,
Hmm.
literally the impetus of the book.
I love
And so
that.
there's a scene where a character comes up to her and goes, "Annie, are you okay?" I'm like, "There it is. I did it. I pulled out the joke." Like, it's like, and so like the world expands in act two and act three, and there's all these other guys, and Woody's son is there, and he's a bad guy and all this stuff. Because I realized in the first 30 something pages, I killed off the main bad guy. I'm like, shoot, now what do I do? So then I had to find a different bad guy, and there's this big struggle for power. And so there's like this movie director character, Thea. And so Thea's this, Louisiana movie direct B movie kind of stuff in the 1950s. And so her and Annie are actually best friends, and she would get Annie to submit scripts as Annie because Thea is not of the Caucasian persuasion, if you will. Like,
Hmm.
she's mixed race and it's bad enough she's a woman in Hollywood and all this stuff. So she can't get scripts published because or picked up because they're like, oh, you're black and you can't do that here, and you're a woman,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So it really leans into that element of 1950s are really bad and there's a lot of racism and it's really really lousy, right? Like I
Hmm.
don't use the n-word as a human being. I've encountered it a bunch. I lived in the cities, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't use it. It's not my vocabulary. It bothers me when white authors do that.
Hmm.
I don't use it, so I don't. And so there's a lot of references to folks who are black and all this stuff, but they encounter racist characters who are awful. And it I wanted to kind of be true to that with also being humorous and just trying to write a good book. So Thea has this son. His name's Isaiah, right? And Isaiah is a 6-year-old kid. And so I know this is very long-winded, but this actually is going to tie in. So I finished remembering the dame, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to write another book. So Derek and I started, jotting down ideas, and we're going to do this New Orleans book. And there's a detective, yay, detective stories, right? Like detective stories are just they're fun, and especially if they're not good detectives or they're down on their luck detectives, they're really fun because then you can just throw bad stuff at him, and it's like, yeah, okay, he deserves that. And
I feel no
so,
pity for you.
yeah, exactly. So then, like, I realized in the middle of like jotting down the ideas that I found a character who ended up being Thea's granddaughter. Like, okay, great. So now these two books tie together. I'm like, well, now what do I do? Oh, maybe I should write the story about Isaiah, who then has this little girl named Jolien. And so, how does that all happen? And then, well, of course, that's Flytrap. And so
Nice.
Flytrap is the first book with Isaiah, who calls himself Is. After that is Landry, Iz. And so is doing his best as a dad. And I took the notion of I want to write about things that are true to me in a very profound way without making it seem like I'm writing about being like, I don't want to write about like being a victim or being impacted by um my son's disability. So my son has autism. He's 9 years old, and choked up. He doesn't talk. He's very low functioning. He functions probably about the level of a 2 year old, somewhere in there. And he's very needy and very attention seeking, and he loves big hugs and he loves to wrestle, all this great stuff. And so he has a lot of really cool elements, right? And so I like, well, how do I portray that in a natural way? And so I gave Iz a son who is so I started writing this during the mid-pandemic. So I'd already written the first book. So this is like pandemic was starting to quote unquote end. So this has been 2021, 22. And so I wanted to make his son my son, like at least give the reference points. And so his son is more they don't have autism in the 1980s, so it's set in the 1980s, 1984, I think. And it's like it revolves around how he can be a good dad to this son. And then he has Jolien, this little girl who's 3, and she's based off of my twins who are 5 now. They were 3 at the time, so I used a lot of their reference points and like things they found funny. And so it's a lot about like how can he be a good dad and a fixer for these big lawyers in New York. And then I kind of ran with that story idea, and then I peppered in some other stuff on the Los Angeles side. So where Remembering the Dame takes place is in Los Angeles. So I picked back up on Thea. Now Thea is a successful movie director, has her own movie studio, all this kind of stuff, right? So Annie's gone. We don't know where Annie is. She's MIA. Kind of less worried about where she's at. All this wind is best. And so yeah, so like, and then the second book picks up where the first one leaves. So Flytrap is 100% cliffhanger. Like, oh no. So like he gets himself into some pretty big jams. He's a fixer, and so he has clients that want him to do some really illegal stuff, and so he does it just to keep him out of jail. And so he's in the middle of doing something, gets in a car crash, and he's like, hears the sirens, and his first thought is, oh, I am so effed. And so like then I was like, all right, well now I gotta write another. So then I wrote the second book, which is Kingfisher. I have a copy of that sitting here with me. And that picks up basically where Flytrap ends. It adds in this new character, Kingfisher, who's this God, he's like all these guys I used to run with in New York. Just thug to the nines. They just don't care. They're gonna do whatever they want. They're gonna do whatever makes them big piles of money, and they're very, very unfortunate in doing so. So like I kind of like wrapped a lot of them into this Kingfisher character, right? And so he's just a disaster, and he's causing all this trouble. And so like his story wraps up, and then now I'm on to the third book, which will wrap up the Isaiah trilogy, basically. So this will be he gets the third book. It's called Raptor. Whenever I get it finished, it'll be the major series. But they all fall under this century noir world, basically. I kind of took some notes from like Terry Pratchett, right? Where you can have a big world and you can have all these different kind of characters exist in that world. And somehow they all sort of tie together. And then there's stuff in Flytrap that pays off. It's going to pay off in the New Orleans novel. So like there's a little boy in that pays off in the New Orleans novel, and in Flytrap there's a different little boy that pays off in the New Orleans novel. And Jolien's in the New Orleans novel. So it's like I kind of like set up these plot elements that I don't pay off in those books, or I pay off in the second book, and then they pays off later. Like so like some of the stuff with Remembering the Dame, there's these robots that Annie's into making robots. It's like a thing. She's a spy. Can't remember anything, of course, because awesome amnesia. And so a lot of Remembering the Dame is like her trying to piece together her life. At the end, it's like, who am I? And basically she kind of comes to the conclusion of, I'm not who other people say I am. I'm who I say I am. That real big search for identity. And so that's a big theme in that book.
Now, are you going to go back to Andy? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Annie picks back up. Of course.
Okay.
Can't leave Annie alone. She's too good.
Good.
No, she's so just, and I've got the end of um I have the end of Raptor with Annie. So there's this in remembering the Dame. She's found this she's like a Annie's double basically. So Annie had this woman she pulled out of Russia, Cold War World War II, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to call you Red Annie because you're a red, you're a commie, but you're
Hmm.
going to do some of the underhanded stuff that I don't want to do, or we can make it look like I'm doing, and then the two of us can be in the same place at the same time, kind of thing. Like you go over here, I'll go over here, and they won't be able to tell who's who." And so Red Annie, in remembering the Dame, kind of gets her lead into taking over this kind of criminal organization that Annie was leading, and then became an amnesiac and jumped out of, and was like, I don't know, I don't do criminal stuff anymore. And so at the end of Raptor is like a big face off between these two. And by then they're both, they're geriatrics. They're in their 80s at the end of Raptor. And so it's like this blue hairs pulling guns on each other element, right?
I like that though.
Right. Yeah. No, I grew up near New Jersey. I know what's up, right? So I love the idea of them being like geriatrics and they both have guns and oh, you're a B. And what did you say? I didn't hear you. I said you're a B. Oh, you're a B and all this thing.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's kind of gonna be the where that book wraps, but I need to get there first. I got these other characters I'm wrapping up and like yeah, a lot of like so the Russians are kind of the bad guys and they like weave in and out of the Islandry books. And so there's a boxer in Flytrap that like so I like the element of cliffhangers. I kind of like that, like you lead up to a certain thing in the chapter and then you stop. Oh
Yes.
no. And
Yeah.
then you drop a different chapter in between them and then like, oh, okay, now here's part two and we pick back up. And so there's this boxer, Big Joe. He's like this world heavyweight, whatever guy in Flytrap, and so he's fighting this Russian guy. Ends up like killing him at the end of part one. But there, then the cops show up, and there's the actual Duval shows up. So there's two Duvals. One's dead at the beginning. Remember the Dame. The other one is the younger brother, but he's still alive, like all the way through. And he's like, he's my he is my I have to do something really funny to get out of this very serious stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just throw things at Duval, right? And so like he dresses as a woman from time to time. So there's like a theme here of you can
Hmm.
be who you want to be, right? And Duval though dresses as a woman exclusively for the reason of getting drugs and or alcohol or whatever he's into at the moment.
Nice.
And so it's not like he's yeah, so just he's really, and so like if I need to do something to somebody, like have a raccoon fall out of the ceiling in the seedy motel onto him, always just yeah, he's getting it. Like like if there's an element of like I just okay, it's been a very very serious couple three, four chapters, then I'll be like, okay, where's Duval at? I need to have him, he's sitting at a bar hitting on this other cop, and he's like, oh hey, how you doing? Kind of thing. And the cop's looking at him like, that's the worst drag I've ever seen, Duval. And he's like, how did you know it was me? Yeah. So like he's my go-to for nonsense. And remembering the Dame, there's this element of they're investigating this other mobster, this Russian guy that got whacked. And Duval shows up dressed as a woman because they basically pulled him out of the bar to like go and investigate this murder. And the one cop's saying to him, uh, detective, do you need the change? And he's going, what, it's casual Friday. And the guy's like, it's Tuesday. And he's like, it's casual Tuesday. So he's like, he's incorrigible. And so like, he's just the best for that kind of stuff. And so like all the rest of them are they kind of go through these range of emotions. And Duval is just going to run into the wall and then pick himself back up and be like, all right, I'm good. Oh, a drink? Yeah, I'll have a drink. I'm good. you know? And so he's great for that. He's my go-to. Yeah,
Would you end up writing a standalone book about Duvall?
absolutely not. No way. No, he can't. He can't. He's way too good as the
Comic relief.
as the comic relief. Yeah. So in the third book with Iz Landry, Duval, you're gonna love this bit. So Duval has gotten himself wrangled up with Reddy and his crew. You know, he's done some things to help them in the two previous books. The third book, though, they want him out of the way, and so they've given him this, like, this woman, and he's describing it. He's like, oh my gosh, she's the most beautiful one I've ever seen, and she's just plying him with drugs and just knocking him out every chance she gets, right? And so they move him across the country, they move him to New York, drop him off, and so she's basically the handler to keep him in line and keep him drugged up when they need to. And so he's saying to Iz in the other book, he's like, oh, this girl, and she's just the best. And is looking at him like, fella, like, you've been beaten with the ugly stick. No woman's gonna come anywhere near you. Like, and he's like, oh no, she loves me, and it's, I sure, I love that for you. And he gets a lot of good story run, but he is the comic relief. He's the one I go to when I just need, like, a break from the serious, because they get very serious about their stuff. And oh,
Yeah.
we got to run away from this, and oh, my son's having struggles, and I'm doing this, and I'm trying to be a good dad, and his wife is left, and so, like, there's all these elements of how can you be a good dad. And fortunately, he has a friend that has a daughter, and so he's supporting her through college so she can help during the day with his little girl. And like, it's like, I really wanted to lean into the idea of it takes a village, because
Yeah,
it takes a village. You
it
know what I mean?
does.
It's kids, like, and so, but with that notion, it takes a village to raise creatives, right? Like, if I didn't
Yes.
have Derek, I would be really struggling, because I wouldn't have anybody to say, well, what happens next? And I wouldn't have written a book,
Yep.
you know?
I
And so,
I have a
yeah,
couple myself. My
yeah.
my daughter's stepmom and my sister. Actually, it's funny. My sister lives in Texas, and
Oh, yeah, nice.
I don't know exactly where. She just recently moved. I'm like, yeah, cool. I know, but I send them each a chapter at a time to read, and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
recently gotten the text message of, when I come home for Christmas, I am beating you with shoes. I am pelting you with shoes. There's just going to be a whole suitcase full of shoes that's coming your way. And my daughter's stepmom's like, I'll be there with the popcorn, because I'm not going to throw a shoe at you because I want more story, but like, I just want to watch. And I'm like,
I
valid,
love that. I
valid.
love that.
I
That's,
and
yeah.
if it wasn't for the two of them and the small handful of beta readers I had for the first book, I
Mhm.
probably would not have. I don't know. I may have continued just because screw it. I really don't care what people think.
Right. Yeah.
But also, it was also the thing that, like, people were like, "Okay, excuse me, ma'am. When is the next one, and why are you doing this to my soul?"
Yes.
I have made threats to yeet off a couple of the main characters, like the main love interests in my story, because like
That's this book. That's what
my
happened at the end of this book. Everybody was pissed. They're like,
yeah,
what happened next?
and
So
it's
I don't know. Wait
funny.
for the next book. You can get there.
Well, so in I have a fated mates situation in mind, but
Yeah. Nice.
with fated mates, there's only usually ever just like one or two or three. This one, I'm just like,
Mhm.
how about six?
Yeah.
Not including her. Like, you have her, and then there's six of them. Five of them all have known each other their whole lives because they're brothers, but each one of them has a different mom.
Oh,
And
yeah. Nice.
then
I love that.
you throw in the villain's kid.
Ooh. Oh, that's
And
hot.
that's happening in this next book. And I also did I did like a whole couple chapters on like a side story about her uncle, like the main character's uncle, who is a death god, who
Yeah.
ends
Nice.
up meeting the cousin of two of her mates, who's a
Yeah.
mortician.
Oh, I love that.
So the two of them, even though you're getting his whole Sabi backstory, which I got like several text messages of, wait, what? Hold on. He did this with what? Wait, do I like him or do I hate him? And I'm like, that's the whole point. Like, I
Yeah.
want you to feel that emotion. But his name's Cirrus and her name's Holly, and they're actually getting their own spin-off, which
Oh, yay.
is
Good
apparently
job.
being announced now because I didn't even
Good
oops,
job.
I'm
Look at
announcing it early.
you. Letting the cat out of the bag. Go. Go,
but
Krystal.
but yeah, so they're gonna have their own spin-off because of the reaction I've gotten from several beta readers. And if the street sweeper people could stop going by my house right now, that'd be great.
I can't hear him. You're good.
Oh well, that's good because I am, and it's distracting. But so it's just it's funny because I have a list, like so it's not as busy today, but for like so yesterday because I have 13 books that I'm writing right now. It's
Yeah,
it's
nice.
it's a lot, but like so that's my notebook. It's like this is just all like
I don't think that's a problem. You should, if I was
everything.
inside, I would show you my whiteboard. I
Oh
have I have
gosh,
the
yeah.
entire rest of the year mapped out on the game company. I don't know if we covered that. Yeah, so I run a board game company called Roll and Write Revolution, and we do print and plays. And we've started to get into box games where folks can get the box game from the game crafter. And so they go on, they order it. Game crafter handles everything. They handle the entire manufacturing, shipping, everything.
Oh, that's
Like
awesome.
my goal was I didn't want any kind of inventory.
Yeah.
I went into that with the old company was disastrous. I thought I'm not doing this. So that was why I stayed out of running a publishing company. So now I publish books on Amazon and they handle everything. I'm like, yeah, this is smart. I love this.
Yep.
Yeah. And like I really love that though. Like I've got I jokingly tell people I have 30 games that I'm sitting on waiting to release, and I still design like a game every month. And I still write, working on the fourth novel still and the fifth novel still. And maybe some more novels after that. We'll see. Like I think it's just, you for me, I started writing the novels because I would get creatively blocked on the games. And so
Mhm.
then I got into writing the novels. Now I get creatively blocked on the novels. I go back to the games. And so I never actually hit that creative wall, which was cool. And so like with the pandemic and stuff, I started to draw again. I started to learn how to use Photoshop. I started to do graphic design. And I'm not particularly great at these things, but I'm good enough to produce a product, and I'm good enough to um, warrant people saying, "Hey, I need help finishing my stuff." And so that's like, it takes a village. Like you've got your sister, and you got your friend or your daughter's
Mhm.
mom, right? And
Stepmom, but yeah, she's my
yeah,
best friend. Yeah.
yeah, great. Like, I mean, you need those. Like, my sister is my beta reader. Like, she 100% is. Like, I just send her a chapter at a time, like you do, and I get back the odd notes, and I get back the "What did you do to default? Did he deserve that?" I'm like, did he deserve that? And she's like, "Yeah, he deserved that. Good job."
I love that. So with me, I randomly sent out because yeah, I don't know about you, but most of us have the best thoughts and
Yeah.
ideas for chapters in the shower. So I'm like,
Writing,
my
doing dishes. Yeah.
well, so I take my phone in the shower with me, and everybody's just like, "Why do you do that?" And I'm like, "Because if I have a note, by the time I get out of the shower, it's gone." So I
Yep.
actually screenshotted. I like typed out a note and I screenshotted it to them, and it's a little small teaser that I came up with for Holly and Cirrus's book, and I sent it to them. And the response was, excuse me, who allowed you to be like this? And I was like, is that a bad excuse me? They're like, no, 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 no. That's
Yeah.
when's the book getting written? We need it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I am a D&D nerd. I've
Yeah.
played D&D, I played Magic the Gathering growing up.
Yeah.
I was a
Me
Harry
too.
Potter kid because,
That,
obviously
that
that
missed
was
me.
there. But I was Dragonlance.
Yeah.
Hands down, Dragonlance was my thing. And so I was talking to my boyfriend about writing, and he was just like, oh, you need to do one that's like a mafia boss. And I was like, I don't know. And then he was like, well, how about like this magical mafia boss? And I'm like wizard mafia? And he goes, yes. And like the
Yeah.
wizard. And so the plan is with his assisting guidance on like he's
Yeah.
basically giving me the idea and I get to run with it however
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
But he was like, so what if it's like this vampire and this werewolf fall in love, but they can't be together because, you know, one bite from her, he's dead, and vice versa. Like they're toxic for each other, but they love each other. He goes, so what if they go to this wizard mafia boss to be like, hey,
Fix it.
we
Make it
need
so
to
we